This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock, joined by Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge. Good to have you with us.
Well, good to be here, Roby.
Thanks. Haven't seen you in a while. Congratulations on the birth of your daughter. I didn't ask you to bring any pictures here, but give me an update on how your baby is.
Well, we could do an entire segment on Juliana Carroll Johnson. That's my husband, Boyce, and I are so excited to brought this little girl into the world at the end of July, and she's just been such a blessing. And we just thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers. Being new parents is exciting. It just really changes your perspective.
Quite a bit. So,
it does.
Are you getting any sleep?
Intermittently. That's what.
What's been the sleep routine?
She gets up about at 3 a.m. and again at 6 a.m. So I'm ready to start my day at any time.
Your staff is appreciative, I'm sure, of all those middle of the night emails that you're firing off there. We used to have to ride around in a car with one of our kids to put them back to sleep. So 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning,
just driving
anytime, yeah. I'm sure the Little Rock police were wondering why a big Suburban was, cruising around different parts of town. But let's talk about your record as Attorney General. You're running for re-election this year. You got a Democratic opponent here, but let's begin with what you've been doing in the office and talk about regulation, rollbacks, your activity on a lot of federal issues here. You said you were going to do this. You got Waters of the U.S., you got the Affordable Care Act. Tell me what you think have been some of your most major accomplishments in terms of that activity at the federal
Absolutely.
level?
Well, I think the Waters of the U.S. rule, which had a great deal of impact not only on Arkansas's farmers and ranchers, but all landowners across the state. It was a big power grab, if you will, by the President Obama's administration. Arkansas, once I came into office, we joined a lawsuit, pushed back against that WOTUS rule, and that was a big win. Again, that was a big power grab, expanding the scope of Waters of the U.S. Likewise, we have the so-called Clean Power Plan, which would have skyrocketed utility rates for Arkansans, being able to get a stay put in place on the so-called Clean Power Plan. The Regional Haze Rule. There's also rules such as the Department of Labor's overtime rule. This is something that small businesses, in particular, Roby, could have felt a real crunch had we not put a stop to that through the courts, and where you have individuals who could be considered salary or hourly workers, and what that would have meant to small businesses in terms of whether or not they have to pay.
This is Ria Lana's case that she's been front and center on, the consignment business person here.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. The Affordable Care Act, this is another area where you have been active on some federal lawsuits here. One of the things that you hear critically about that is it could undo the individual mandate. You've joined a group of states attorneys general who believe that it's because of the federal tax law, it doesn't make that enforceable anymore, correct?
That's right. When President Trump and the Republican Congress passed the tax law at the end of last year, essentially eliminating the tax penalty for the individual mandate, that took away what the Supreme Court had previously leaned on, upholding the Affordable Care Act. When the Affordable Care Act went to the Supreme Court a couple of years ago, essentially Chief Justice John Roberts used that as the crutch, the tax penalty on the individual mandate. Well, now that's eliminated. So the states, what we're saying in this lawsuit is because that tax penalty has been taken off the table, the entire Affordable Care Act should be deemed unconstitutional.
What's the replacement plan for that? It seems Congress has had a little difficult time coming up with a replacement plan that both the House and the Senate could agree on. Insurance executives that I talked to say that this would torpedo the insurance markets.
Well, that's why we want Congress to be thinking now. And to be working on a replacement now. Just as Arkansas, once the Affordable Care Act was passed and came into play, Governor Hutchinson, although he has been opposed to the Affordable Care Act, we did what was necessary here in Arkansas to make the best of the situation through Arkansas Works. However, if the law is found to be unconstitutional, then we need to go back to the drawing board at Congress. But that's the role of Congress. That's not the role of the attorneys general to play policy at the national level.
Let's talk about executions. They have restarted in the Hutchinson administration. You have been active on that front. We seem to have a problem obtaining drugs right now. Is there any breakthrough on that right now? Is just everything on hold again? Where do you kind of see public executions at this point in time?
Well, currently we do not have all of the drugs necessary to carry out executions here in Arkansas. We do have a couple of inmates who have almost gotten to the point where their appeals have exceeded, that they've used all of their appeals to where we could ask for execution dates. However, again, we don't have the drugs necessary. Until we do, we will not be carrying out executions here in Arkansas. And it may be something that the legislature needs to take up in the 2019 session, is reviewing the method, not necessarily the method of execution, but how we disclose what we can and cannot disclose for the drug manufacturers.
They've done that before, it got stricken. Are there other options out there? Could there be other drug combinations that you'd be supportive of?
Well, there are other drugs that other states are using. Fentanyl has now been used to carry out an execution in other states. And so Arkansas has also been part of lawsuits or cases in Nevada and other states to uphold this method of execution. I think it's important that because we were able to successfully carry out those executions in 2017, we carried out 4 executions, that we continue to do so, give those families closure.
Public corruption at the state capitol. This is something that you have joined in some of the U.S. attorneys' offices. I'm supposing some of the local prosecutors as well, to investigate things that have been going on. We see a headline, it seems like every other week, with a sentence or an accusation. Your opponent, Mike Lee, has called for tougher ethics laws. You've been relatively silent in terms of pushing legislation. That's always kind of been your mantra, is to let the legislature legislate and you advise. How do you think ethics laws ought to be strengthened from what you have been seeing through this public corruption investigation?
I think, first of all, the first order of business is to have the laws in place adhered to and to enforce those laws. Unfortunately, what we've seen are these legislators, public officials, have broken current laws. And so we need to enforce the laws that we have on the books. It is not the role of the Attorney General to pass legislation. And that is, as you said, Roby, that has been my mantra, that I don't want to be the legislator in chief. I want to be the Attorney General. I want to be the chief legal officer. And so to work with the legislators to make sure whatever we do pass will be upheld if challenged. That being said, we have way too many public officials who are violating public trust. We cannot have individuals breaking the law. That is why I started the Public Integrity Unit division at the Attorney General's office to work side by side, the state police, the FBI, others, to investigate public officials, not just legislators, not just elected officials, but any public official who violates the public trust.
So it could be somebody within a state agency. It could be an agency head, per se. I mean, I'm just hypothetically
certainly, it
throwing
could be
things out
anyone
there.
in the public sphere who violates a city clerk, for example, or a assistant police chief who violates the public trust.
I know you wouldn't want to violate any investigation that's going on, but from what you see in your pipeline of that investigation, you have said publicly, so I think we can talk about this a little further. You expect to see other indictments or accusations or potential pleas coming through?
We do, particularly as it relates to Medicaid fraud charges. The Attorney General's office, we have a Medicaid fraud control unit. In that, we have already made some large arrests in terms of large charges with Robin Ravindran and others, $2 million worth of Medicaid fraud that these individuals committed with the preferred family health care case. There are a number of legislators who have either been charged as part of that, or former legislators or current legislators who are under investigation.
There's a couple of big stories we can talk about nationally that's happening in terms of justice, but let's focus on one that's not likely to shift too much between now and when we possibly get this on air. You've been supportive of Brett Kavanaugh as a nominee for the Supreme Court of the United States. I think you've cited a lot of his professional rulings in terms of your support, but we are seeing women come forward. As of this morning, we have seen a potential 4th person even coming forward and saying that that there could be some allegations of sexual assault. Should he be appointed to the Supreme Court if there is this much smoke around his potential nomination?
I stand behind the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. These women who are making these allegations should certainly be heard. However, there is nothing that I have seen yet. There's no specific dates, there's no specific time, there's no specific instances that they have alleged that he has committed these acts. These allegations are coming at the 11th hour. I hope that these women are not being used. That's what my fear is, that these women are being used by Democratic senators and others to stall this nomination from going forward. Brett Kavanaugh has been a standout jurist. He's someone that adheres to and follows the rule of law and ensures that America will follow the rule of law. And so to have these allegations come at the last minute, I again hope these women are not being used.
What if they're not being used? I mean, you've worked in a prosecutor's office
Sure.
before. You know people who have been sexually assaulted before. It is a difficult process to come forward and discuss. I've talked to a lot of women in the last week as a result of this who have told me, one in particular told me twice she's been sexually assaulted, and she said, I've never talked about it to anyone. I never brought it up to my parents. But if that person was going to be nominated to the Supreme Court or run for president or governor of Arkansas, I would have to feel pretty compelled to think about coming forward and saying that. That's legitimate, isn't it?
It is legitimate if anyone has suffered from any sort of abuse, sexual abuse, physical, emotional abuse. And that's one of the things that we do at the Attorney General's office, go after individuals who have committed such crimes. Again, what we're seeing with the nomination Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court is these are 11th hour allegations. And I just hope that these women are not being used, that they are not being put forward to bring forth these allegations for political purposes, that if they are in fact legitimate, that we find that out, that these women are given their opportunity to be heard.
If it turns out that they are given their opportunity to be heard and the allegations seem credible to you, would it change your support for Judge Kavanaugh?
Well, again, we're going to have to hear from these women, Roby, and if they do in fact testify before the Senate committee and we hear what they have to say and the senators make that determination. Most of these allegations are, right now they are in fact allegations. There's, again, no specific date, no specific time. They're not sure who was there. It would be very difficult for someone to bring charges. It would be impossible for them to have civil claims because of the lack of facts surrounding these instances. Simply saying that something occurred does not make it so. And hopefully this did not occur. That is, all of us hope this didn't occur for a number of reasons, regardless of whether the individual being accused is appointed to dog catcher, much less to the Supreme Court.
I don't think that the debate is necessarily criminal or civil in nature. It's more about character. It is. If it does turn out that these claims seem credible to you, I guess I'm asking hypothetically, would it change your position on your support for Judge Kavanaugh? There's lots of other conservative jurists out there that could be nominated to the Supreme Court too.
Sure, if there are factual, true, these allegations turn out to be factual, true, if Judge Kavanaugh says, yes, this did in fact happen, then it would certainly, I think, change everyone's consideration for him as a judge. However, what we are seeing from the Democratic Party, from these senators, are absolute hypocrisy. We have a congressman who's the head, number 2 at the Democratic National Committee, Representative Keith Ellison, who very serious sexual abuse charges have been alleged against the number 2 at the Democratic National Committee. Total silence on behalf of the Democrats. Where are they on this? And so that's to me what I would ask. Why are they, full force to get these women out front, but how are they silencing someone who has attacked one of their own? It's time for us to have a level playing field, and I believe in supporting those who have, victims of domestic violence, of any kind of violence. That's why I have printed and put forward over 90,000 of Laura's cards, so that way victims of domestic violence have a voice. They know they can go to law enforcement. They know where to get resources, but we must not use these victims as a pawn for political purposes. And unfortunately, that's what I believe Senator Feinstein, Senator Gillibrand, and other leading Democrats are doing, are using these women as pawns to push forward a political agenda.
All right, it's a sensitive topic. I appreciate you answering questions on that, and it's good to visit with you, as always.
Well, thank you, Roby. There's a lot going on at the Attorney General's office. We've had some record number Medicaid fraud arrests, consumer cases that we've handled, and so there's a lot going on. I'd be happy to talk to you about it any time and to brag about the record. I know, but you didn't ask about all the great things that we're doing at the Attorney General's office, including cyber crimes, consumer issues, and so whenever you want to have me back on, I'd love to talk about those things with you as well.
Sounds good. Thanks for being here. All right. Thank you for tuning in. That's all for today's program. We'll see you next time.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.